Hello and welcome to Being Naked. My name is Venus Castleberg, your host, and I am so excited and grateful today to have Ryan T. Welcome, Ryan.
Thank you, Vannes. Hi, everyone. Glad to be here. Thank you for inviting me here.
Absolutely. I'm super excited to have you. So one of the ways that we like to start this podcast is to just take our deepest barriers down, even the ones we don't know about.
As the name suggests, right?
Yes.
Being naked.
Yes, exactly. And one of the things I've noticed for me is that the more I'm willing to take my barriers down, the more exposed I'm willing to be, the more vulnerable I am, and almost like the greater invitation I can be to something different. So thank you for doing that with me. And so Ryan, why don't you tell me, we kind of talked for a few minutes before this, but you had a really great story about vulnerability and how it showed up for you. Will you share your story?
Okay, so a few minutes before we started this show, this podcast, so you asked me a question. So Ryan, do you have a story of you like being vulnerable? And then I was like, I'm sure I have, but I can't think of any right now. Maybe it's just not the energy for this show right now. And then suddenly I could recall one memory of where I wasn't willing to be vulnerable. I thought I was, but I wasn't. so, so this happened, I think, 2 years ago, about 2 years ago, in a class that, so in SS classes, so we would ask question and then the facilitator would facilitate us. So in that class, it was Dane's SOP class. So Dane was trying his best to facilitate me to get me out of the shit that I got myself into. So he so he asked me some questions and then I just look at him and I was like blank. I don't know. I don't have any good answer. But he knew that wasn't true. It's like I think a lot of people knew it wasn't true except me. I was like, no, it's true. I just got blank. So he tried many different ways, and then he was like, "Oh, this is such a tough situation." And then he just kept running a clearing with me about like what do I actually know that I pretend not to know or I deny that I know. If I would allow me to know it, and then like things would change. I think he ran it for like about 20 times. Can you imagine like the one clearing he read it like 20 times? And then I was still like, so, but but this is actually quite unusual for me. So even though like we didn't get to like some places like that day, but it put me into thinking like, what's going on here? What am I hiding? Actually, not hiding from others, but what am I hiding from me? What is it that I know that I just pretend that I don't know? So, and then I I realized it's because of I judge myself too much. I was like, no, this is so wrong. I would never let me know that I did something so terrible. So when that's the case, I mean, actually it wasn't that bad. So number one, it wasn't that bad. Number two, if it's really that bad, if I could be vulnerable with myself, I could change it immediately. Okay, it's because of I wasn't willing to be vulnerable with myself and of course with him and with others, then it became so tough. It became something so hard to change.
Cool. So how did you come to realize that, like, wow, this is a place where I actually really need to be vulnerable with myself?
Well, as I said, that is a very rare situation for me. So I asked myself that question a lot, and then I just got more and more awareness, like bit by bit. And then and then after that, in a different class, when I met him again, I asked him the same thing, more or less the same thing again. And so I keep getting different part of the whole story.
Mhm.
And then eventually I'm like, oh yeah, okay. So that gave me that lightness, and then to know what's really going on and start changing things.
Right. Would you be willing to share with us what it was?
It's more like a, how should I say it? It's it's bit actually I don't have, well, okay, it's about man and woman. There
Mhm.
was something that I did that, so I create some mess, and then it's actually I create that to make women wrong so that I could create separation with them. It's something like this.
Okay, gotcha. And
So
so,
you can imagine this will be quite a tough situation, but actually it's not that bad, but it could be quite a tough situation, especially when, for example, it's in a class with, like, I don't know, like another 100 people watching you. Like, it's like everyone watching you, like, okay, tell us, what did you do?
right? You're so bad and wrong. So
Yeah,
were you able to change it for yourself?
I changed it with myself a bit, and then also with Dane's helping, and I also asked some other facilitators when, with those that I trust, that, and then that I'm was willing to be vulnerable with.
Mhm.
So yeah, of course, eventually I got it changed.
Okay, awesome. And what would you say is like the key? I think you mentioned it, but you were kind of saying if you would just be willing to acknowledge it to yourself, right? To just be like,
Yeah,
okay, this is the way that a behavior that I'm doing or something that I'm doing. I think a lot of people misconstrue that when we say vulnerability, that you have to expose everything to everyone. That's not actually it. And I loved what you said about like it was about me with me, and when you're not willing to be vulnerable with yourself, that's actually what sticks you the most. So,
and usually when you are not, if you are not very vulnerable with yourself enough, other people can sense it as well. They know you're like, you're not telling the whole truth, you are kind of like hiding something, and then
right.
it's like you will be the only one that like act like a fool, like pretend that you don't know.
Yeah, you're like, I don't know what everybody's talking about.
It's not my fault. So you see, when I was trying so hard to prove that I wasn't wrong, underlying that, I already believe I was wrong, bad, terrible, evil, awful, blah blah blah. That's why I need to hide it so much.
Hmm.
Okay, so when I reach a point like, all right, okay, I'm not judging me, I just want to know what's going on, then I can expose that part about me to me.
Hmm.
And if it's really bad, all right, let's change it. Okay, if you keep it, you cannot change it. If you would expose it, at least you have a chance of changing it.
Right. Wow. That is such great insight. Cool. So what would you say that you've learned about vulnerability since then?
Well, I think I summarized that in one sentence just now. Don't judge you. Okay. And even if you have done the, I don't know, like the most evil thing or the most sickening thing, most perverted stuff, but of course, most people didn't really do anything like that. But be willing to know it, face it, deal with it, and change it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's interesting too. I had a client once come to me, and she was like, I'm into BDS, and I was like, okay. Like, and I had zero point of view about it. And she, like, her jaw dropped to the floor. She was like, I have never told anybody that in my life and not had 100,000 judgments come at me. And it was like, I just didn't have a point of view about it. And it's so funny how you really hit the nail on the head. So many people think that what is so bad and wrong about them that everybody will think it's bad and wrong about them, and it's really our own judgments of ourselves. And if we could
Yeah.
just let go of our own judgments, what else could be possible? And there's a level of freedom when you're just like, okay, here I am, warts and all, you know. And yeah. So why do you think, here's a great question. Why do you think that we're constantly trying to prove that we're not wrong?
Well, I would say most people try to maintain a good image. Like, I want you to see me as good or even perfect, and there will be like another story that will be crazy. And then thinking that if people like us enough, then we won't be wrong, we will be accepted by them, and then maybe we will get what we want. If people like us, we get what we want. If they don't like us, and then it will be harder for us to get what we want. But of course, that's not true. That's just what we believe.
Right. Yeah. And it's like we're trying to convince them that we're not bad and wrong, but we don't actually, they're not the ones that need to get it. We do.
And if we need to convince them that we are not bad, not wrong, or we are good, it's really that we are judging ourselves first. Maybe we don't even realize that we are judging ourselves.
Right.
I mean, people will judge you anyway, but if you, I mean, most people will judge you anyway, but if you are worried that people would judge you, you probably judge you first.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. If you didn't have a point of view about it, about yourself, then you wouldn't care what other people thought.
And when you don't judge you, usually people don't judge you that much as well, or don't judge you at all. They will tell you like, that's right. Why are you judging you so much?
Right. Wow. Cool. So what would you say for our listeners today? What would you give like as a tool to maybe get themselves out of judgment of themselves?
I think I would ask them a question. So if they have a similar situation like the one that I talked about just now, like something that you feel so wrong, whether obviously to you or maybe secret to you, and then you keep trying to change it, but you are not getting it because you're not vulnerable with yourself. My question for them would be, for how long more do you want to hide this? Okay, because if you keep hiding it, you are the only one that really suffer.
Right.
But if you, I think people call that like bite the bullet, like, okay, go for it. Like, it might not be easy, not comfortable, but it won't be that long. Like, you go through it, and then after that, you get that freedom, that sense of lightness that you otherwise wouldn't get.
Cool. And when you're being you, can you like really, without the judgments, can you see how much of a generosity of spirit that is? Like it's like
I think I lost you for a few seconds. So can you repeat that?
Yeah. So I was wondering if you could, like, I love it, like this whole like not judging yourself thing, and I'm starting to see how we can look at generosity of spirit in a couple different ways. One, like somebody who's really generous and like monetarily generous, like treats people to things and it just is generous in like their gifting and right. But
I think the generosity is not just about money. Maybe it includes giving people the sense and the awareness of you are not wrong.
Right.
Yeah, that will unlock them from a lot of things that they have been so much judging themselves, thinking that they are so wrong. But when finally, like the first person that truly come from a space of like, hey, you are not wrong, and then it takes them out of judgment.
Right.
Yeah, and then maybe they get that energy, and then they can like bring this energy to a lot more people to tell them like, hey, you are not wrong.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I was just getting that recently, like, wow, that is such a generosity of spirit to not only, to not be judging people, but to also not to be in that being you and not judging you. Like, because you're gifting the world you, without your points of view and your stuck stuff. So this has been such a great conversation, Ryan. I'm really grateful. And if you could have anybody get anything out of today, what would you hope that they would go home with?
I would say it's the sense of you are not wrong. And this is something that I don't know how I really got this, but I just like to tell people you are not wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then you are not wrong. You see, it gives you a sense of oh, really? And then it's like all the wrongness start to melt away.
Mm-hmm.
You are not wrong. Okay. So I would say this is what I want to give people.
Is amazing. Yeah, well, thank you for that. Yes, everyone, you are not wrong, no matter what. And thank you, Ryan, for being here. You are such a gift. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Vanessa, for asking me to join you. Thank you.
Next time. Bye.
Bye.